I'm particularly pleased to be here because this is not simply another discussion on the Rohingya crisis. It is a moment of reflection. It is a moment of reckoning. And most importantly, it must be a moment for renewed action. The title of today's dialogue is deeply significant. A decade of Rohingya crisis from humanitarian response to sustainable solutions. 10 years, indeed a long time. For a government, it is a policy cycle. For an institution, it is a planning horizon. But for a child growing up in a refugee camp, 10 years is a childhood. For a young person, it is an education lost. For a family, it is a decade without a home. And for an entire community, it is a generation living in uncertainty. We must not allow 10 years to become 20. Ladies and gentlemen, since the massive influx of 2017, Bangladesh has kept its borders and hearts open. More than 1.2 million forcibly displaced Rohingyas are now sheltered in Bangladesh. We have provided food, shelter, healthcare, education, protection. And we have done so despite our own development challenges, despite limited land, despite high population density, despite enormous pressure on our infrastructure, environment, public services, and host communities. Why? That was our humanitarian choice. That was our moral responsibility. Bangladesh's humanitarian response has also been rooted in a long tradition of compassion and responsibility. In 2017, when the latest influx began, late Prime Minister Begum Khaleda Zia was the first among the political leaders who made statement for the Rohingyas to be allowed refuge in Bangladesh on humanitarian grounds. Bangladesh also draws on earlier experiences under the leadership of Shahid President Zia Rahman in 1978 and late Prime Minister Begum Khaleda Zia in 1992. Repatriation was successfully pursued. The circumstances today are considerably way more complex. Nevertheless, the principle remains unchanged. Bangladesh will continue to pursue a dignified and sustainable return of the Rohingyas through both bilateral and multilateral engagements. But humanitarian generosity must not become an excuse for international inaction. Bangladesh can provide shelter, Bangladesh can provide humanitarian assistance, Bangladesh can help preserve dignity, but Bangladesh cannot resolve a crisis that Bangladesh did not create. Distinguished guests, the humanitarian situation remains extremely serious, funding is declining, needs are not. The 2026 Joint Response Plan has already been reduced, yet the humanitarian needs remain immense. Food, nutrition, wash, education, protection are not luxuries, they are lifelines. Any major funding gap will have consequences for the Rohingyas, for the host communities, for camp stability, and ultimately for regional stability. We therefore urge our international partners, do not let humanitarian fatigue become humanitarian abandonment. The world has many crises, we understand that, but a protracted crisis does not become less urgent simply because it becomes less visible. Ladies and gentlemen, there is another dimension that we must confront honestly. The people of Cox's Bazar have carried an extraordinary burden. They have shared their land, resources, and communities. Their livelihoods have been reflected, their environment has been strained. Their public services have become under pressure. Their generosity must not be taken for granted. Support for the host communities is therefore not an optional addition to the humanitarian response. It is an essential part of it.